everybody. We are live in Evanston, just outside of Chicago, at Northwestern University. I need to know my geography. And I'm joined today by Amy Trejo, Open Innovation Manager at Procter & Gamble. And we have a very exciting webinar on the opportunities for partnering with Procter & Gamble. And Procter & Gamble as a sponsor of our upcoming Synthetic Biology Summit in San Francisco, October 1 through October 3. And Amy's a big part of that. I'm going to be speaking along with her colleagues in the materials group. So we're going to give a couple of minutes for folks to take their seats. I can see you at the back there, just grabbing a coffee. So please take your seats and then we're going to get started. We're going to give a quick intro to Amy and what she does at Procter & Gamble and a few slides. And then we're going to go into a quick Q&A period at the end of the webinar. And in particular today, there is the opportunity to win a free pass to SynBioBeta in October for the best question that we get. And you can add your comments and your questions to the Q&A and we'll receive them here. So we still have a few people joining. So before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit why I'm here at Northeastern University. Oh, I'm sorry, Northwestern. Why
it's here? My alma mater. I have to make sure you get it right.
Having flown over and into Chicago for a number of years, this is the first time that I've actually ever been to Chicago. I'm a little embarrassed to say. And my eyes are held open with cocktail sticks today because my flight was delayed, so I didn't get in until 3:30 in the morning. But welcome to all you Californians. I can see that it's 9 a.m. in California, 11 a.m. here in Northwestern University. And I'm here for a synthetic biology seminar that Amy and I are both going to be participating in this afternoon. So with that, let's get started. Amy works for Procter & Gamble, maker of the household products including Tide, Pampers, Pantene, and Crest. I'm sure that you all are using P&G products in your homes, as I am. She received her BSc in biology from Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, and a PhD in cell and molecular biology here from Northwestern University in Chicago. Amy started the Procter & Gamble at the Procter & Gamble company in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1998 with responsibility for developing upstream skin care technology for P&G's Olay skincare brand, one that I use every day. From there, she moved on to manage upstream technology in the healthcare category, working on digestive wellness brands with focus on the Align probiotic product. I hope we'll talk a little bit about the probiotics in some of the Q&A. And she then moved on to product development, managing development for Head & Shoulders, a product that I never need to use. And for the past 3 years, Amy has been part of the corporate R&D open innovation team, working to bring the best of external technologies into P&G and to accelerate and strengthen their R&D program. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to learn, and for people on the webinar to learn about what is open innovation. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you do and then what is open innovation for folks who are maybe new to it.
Yep, so I work, as John said, in our open innovation team, which is part of our corporate R&D organization. And what I do is work with the R&D teams internally to understand what are the projects they're working on, what are the R&D spaces they're interested in, and then try to connect them externally to partners that can help accelerate their innovation. And that partnership can include anything from university partnerships to industrial partnerships to startups are a big community that we're starting to tap into for innovation because we're finding that a lot of new ideas are starting with startup companies. And so we're looking into that ecosystem as well. So it really runs the gamut of external partnership opportunities that I then landscape and bring back to the teams internally.
Excellent. And Amy, you have a few slides, so we're just going to pass over to those to get a visual introduction to P&G.
Yep, and these just give a little bit of background information on P&G as a company itself, and then talks a little bit about the Open Innovation Organization and the types of activities and things that we do there. So just a few slides to talk about P&G, which is a large multinational consumer products company. Our sales as of 2016 were a little bit over $65 billion, with a little over 15 in net earnings. We operate in over 70 countries, and we sell our brands in over 180 of those as well. Just to give you a feel for what that looks like in terms of our global presence, obviously being a North American-based company, we have the largest percentage of our sales are based in North America at 44%. We have another healthy presence of sales in Europe at 23%, and then the rest of the world in the regions that we sell in, roughly 8 to 9% of our sales. And innovation at P&G, we really look at as the lifeblood of our business. So we invent brands that we look to transform the best performing products in the categories with the highest quality that we feel command a price premium because of the benefits and the superiority that they offer, and provide that value back to the consumer. So we are an industry-based sector structure. We have our fabric and home care businesses, and you can see, hopefully you can see some of the pictures there. They're a bit small, but some of the brands that we sell in that space are baby, family care and feminine care businesses. And you can see, you know, flagship brands like Pampers and Bounty and some of the others there, Tampax and Always on our feminine care business. We have our beauty and grooming business. We have a large hair care business. And as John mentioned, I've worked on the Head & Shoulders brand. We also have Pantene and Herbal Essences, and then some smaller brands in hair care as well. And our skin and personal care business, Olay, is obviously our big skincare brand, which I worked on for many years at the beginning of my career. So hopefully you're reaping the benefits of that, John, as you said, you use Olay. I don't know whether that was true or not, but you know, lots of men do, just so that you know, including my husband. We have a grooming business as well that has the Gillette and Venus shaving, and we have Braun and some other device-based businesses running out of Europe. And then we have our One Health organization, which comprises our oral care and our personal health care businesses. So the oral care is obviously our Crest and Oral-B brands are the biggest brands there. And then our personal health care business has both GI focus and respiratory focus. So we have brands like John mentioned, the Align probiotic that I've worked on, as well as Prilostic OTC, and then our Vicks line of products and Metamucil and Pepto-Bismol as well.
It's amazing how many of these products are such household,
yes,
strong household names.
Yes, we hope so, and we work hard to keep it that way. And so just getting back to innovation a little bit at P&G, this is a nice slide that one of my colleagues put together called Innovation by the Numbers. And you can see here that we really do have a long-standing history of innovation. So we're, you know, celebrating 180 years. We innovate across our brands. We have business, you know, model innovations. And obviously there's a lot of innovation with the social spectrum and social media these days. We have about 6,700 plus R&D employees that are, you know, based at various technical centers around the world. Over 900 of those are PhD scientists, and we've invested most recently around $2 billion in our R&D work. So we do a significant amount of investment in R&D. And as you can see here, I think the statistic at the bottom on the left-hand side is 5 of our top non-food brands are P&G products. And so we're quite proud of that and want to continue to work hard at that. Also, there's the 37,000 plus patents, obviously lots of patents over the 180 years of our existence, with several more that are pending. And so at P&G, we really do define innovation broadly. Obviously, there's technical innovation in ways that we look for, you know, the best of technology innovations externally. And develop those internally as well. We look to innovate across our packaging. That's very important for us. We'd like to take the package and create something more than just the vessel that contains the product, but have it be an integral part of the experience for the consumer. Obviously, we do also a lot of manufacturing process innovation. So how can we become more sustainable with our manufacturing processes and more efficient with those as well? And then obviously today there's a lot of challenges in go-to-market, right? We're moving from brick and mortar based shopping experiences to more online. And so there's a lot of go-to-market innovation that happens, innovations across the way we trademark things, innovations across how we outsource our technologies and partner with external companies in that regard. And then different ways to develop new ideas for how we innovate. You know, we do a lot of innovating how we innovate. So lots of different ways to define and execute innovation at P&G. And the way in which we do that happens across a variety of different models as well. You can see the deal types that we have, basically all kinds, right? Anything from, you know, an acquisition of a company, a divestiture of some of our companies, which, you know, you may have heard of in recent years, some things we've divested to be more focused on the areas that we do want to continue to play in. We've done joint ventures, we'll do research partnerships, different alliances, in and out licensing, you know, the gamut of things, and then others that are still yet to be created, depending on what needs, you know, what meets the needs of the partner or the situation that we're working at the time. And then in terms of some of the areas that, we are focusing on, this gives a highlight or an overview, and I think participants received this as part of the webinar registration, but it's some of the areas that we are focusing on across our R&D, our corporate R&D organization. So the corporate R&D organization is organized into these 5 verticals, and you can see the focus there being in material science, chemistry, life science, smart and connected products, and then advanced packaging. And there's little descriptors there underneath there for the different focuses across those disciplines. And then I think there's even some more detail on some specific opportunities that we're looking for partnering in these corporate R&D spaces in the handout that was sent out as part of the registration materials. So, these really are the places that when I go out in landscape opportunities, these are the places that we look to partner in. And, as I said, really, we believe in open partnerships as being at the heart of our open innovation organization. And so we're very open to that and aim to really set up whatever type of partnership arrangement results in a win-win for both ourselves and then whoever it is that we're working to innovate with. And so with that, that's kind of all that I have in terms of background presentation.
Excellent. Well, we have a couple of questions that have come in already, and this is an interactive webinar, so feel free to ask your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. Matthew Cummings of Deep Science Ventures in the UK asks, are you actively innovating in the feminine care product space?
Yes, we are. I don't work in that category, nor have I historically worked in that category, but I do know that we are looking at ways to innovate there, especially as you think about aging for women. What are the types of needs that they're having as they age, and how can we address those with both our existing product lines and then the new innovations in women's health that we're looking at for the future. I think also, you might have noticed we had launched a line of adult incontinence products for women under our Always brand, and that is a reflection of meeting the advancing consumer needs from the point of, when she enters into using those products into the aging process for women. And I think that we will expect to see further innovations in women's health over time that include not only our paper and feminine care-based products, but also health products, hopefully in the future as well.
I know that we'd had a conversation about the creation of disposable diapers originally, and I don't think either of us were able to confirm this story, but that's what I'd heard is that the innovation of the disposable diaper came from a futuristic visioning exercise that Procter & Gamble did on what does the future clothes look like. And the future clothes, one of those visions was that actually clothes are disposable. Instead of wearing them for however many years, you dispose of them. And from that, this idea of disposable diapers came. So I think it's very interesting innovation space, and particularly around the materials. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about the fireside chat that we're going to have at the opening plenary of SynBioBeta, which is called A Revolution in Materials Built with Biology. Yes. And your colleague Lee Ellen is going to be speaking in that session. Yes,
she will be. She leads the materials team in our corporate R&D organization, and materials are very important for us there as we look at all of the materials that we use across our range of what we call paper-based products, right? But it's not just paper anymore. It's really the materials-based products. Nonwovens are huge. They're a big part of our diaper and our feminine care businesses. And I think as we look to develop more sustainable products going forward, as well as meeting the needs of the consumers that are looking to use more nature-based or nature-inspired products in the future, we're very interested in bio-based materials and how can we improve the products that we're developing and incorporate more bio-based materials. And I think as we think about synthetic biology, that's an important place where synthetic biology can play a role in helping us with our aspirations and our innovation desires in the material science space. So, and I think Lee Ellen will address more of that in the fireside chat, at the conference.
Excellent. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the motivations for P&G to get into bio-based products. What are the alternatives? What's happening in the bio-based world, and why should we care?
Yeah, and I think it's largely driven by consumer interest and consumer desires, right? More consumers are looking for products to help them live, in sync with their natural or their, more healthy lifestyle, more nature-based lifestyle. And so I think the development of products in that space that you're starting to see from Procter & Gamble is a reflection of trying to meet the needs of those consumers who want a more natural lifestyle, right? So some products that we've recently launched in that kind of vein is Tide Pure Clean, is a product that's 65% bio-based in terms of its chemical composition, and has, recyclable packaging as part of that. Also, when we develop more sustainable or bio-based products, we like to think of it holistically and not just think about what's incorporated in the product itself, but also how that product is manufactured, right? And so as we develop more of these types of products, we like to also be more sustainable in the way that our manufacturing processes are developed. And so when we think about, the Downy Nature's Blend product, which is certified USDA BioPreferred program as being 70% bio-based, that also has, as part of its manufacturing, 0% or 100% wind-powered electricity and 0% manufacturing waste to landfill. So those are, kind of more holistic ways that we look to be sustainable and develop more, consumer-friendly and environmentally conscious products.
And so if people aren't familiar with the USDA's bio-based program, it's a set of criteria that if you are bio-based, you get a bio-based certification. And then it doesn't have that many teeth right now to really demand that governments buy bio-based products, but there is certain preference for buying bio-based products.
With the consumers.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
But also with government agencies. I think there is, I remember when I worked at NASA, there was a checkbox when you fill out a purchase order, and if it's bio-based, there is some preference. Just doesn't have, that was the goal, that government could actually drive bio-based. It just doesn't have many teeth to it. But if anybody on the webinar knows more about the USDA bio-based product, then BioPreferred program, then please chime in. We have a couple of questions that I want to just address because they're around pharmaceutical, biomedical, life sciences. One asking, would you invest in brands and products which are therapeutics based? So maybe you could address kind of the kind of partnerships that P&G does. Is it investment, or is it more of a partnership? And then somebody else asking about clinical trials. And so we've discussed before that P&G transition from life science, and maybe you could say how much life science there is going on in terms of those kinds of areas.
There's a lot of questions there.
Sorry.
I think kind of going back to, would we be interested in investing in more therapeutic based technologies with the first one? And the answer there is yes. Obviously we have a healthcare business. We have exited the RX business, so we don't market pharmaceuticals anymore, but we do have an OTC business, and we are very interested in therapeutics in those spaces. So obviously, as I mentioned, the brands that we have today are focused in the digestive wellness and in the respiratory health space with our Vicks products. And so we're primarily interested in technologies that could, help advance OTC medicines in those general areas. In terms of acquisitions versus partnerships, I mean, again, as I mentioned in some of my slides, we run the gamut of partnership, opportunities, and it really is very specific to whatever the program would require. Sometimes if it's a product line that fits with the strategy for one of our businesses, it might just be an outright acquisition, right? In other cases, if it's a technology platform or an interesting technology that could be a platform technology, we might set up a research partnership to help develop that further. And that could take on a variety of different types of partnerships as well.
And sorry if you mentioned this, but investment is also an option, just direct investment in the company, or not traditionally?
We don't typically do equity investments.
Okay.
It's not a part of our regular go-to models. Not to say we've never done it, because there will be examples where that has been done in the past, but it is not a part of how we initially approach a partnership.
Got it. Okay. Great. We have a question just to move into Tim from Tim Staub from Fermentation. He's asking about, he says, understand that every process is different. How does P&G build discipline around scaling fermentation process across the value chain?
Yeah, and we're not vertically integrated, right? And so, we do, especially as we're looking to develop new materials, and particularly bio-based materials, right? We do need to consider scale. I mean, that is one of the things that is a challenge for a company as large as ours, that, new technologies come out and it's great, and we want to be able to leverage those, but getting them at the scale that we need to, run our businesses is always a challenge, right? And cost is related to that as well, right? Until those materials can be scaled, the cost is usually higher. And while we, aim to develop products that are superior in the categories, and therefore can command some level of price premium, there's a point in which that's not effective anymore, right? And so we do need to look at how we do this development of novel and new materials that we aspire to use going forward in a way that is cost effective and available at scale. Right?
Got it. And I knew that if I asked, we would receive. So it's Tim, you were also the co-chair of the Biobased Products Committee at Bio. And he says, John, you're 100% correct. It's encouraged but not mandated. And government buyers are allowed to pay a 20% premium for a USDA BioPreferred product, but it really has no teeth. So Amy, we're getting a ton of questions here about partnerships. So if it's okay with you, we'll just keep taking the questions.
Yeah, that's fine.
Rather than the questions that I had, which are much more interesting. So somebody's asking, within personal care, what are the biggest pain points and how does this translate into opportunities for bio-based products? And maybe that's one of your colleagues who will be at the meeting in October.
Yes, we will have some folks there that know more about the personal care business and where it is today than I do myself. I do know that, obviously being regulated category, particularly for the respiratory business, making sure that as we develop, new technologies in this space, that they meet the regulatory requirements, not just within North America, but in other parts of the world, which is where it becomes a bit more challenging sometimes. And so anytime you work in regulated spaces, those do become the pain points, especially when you're developing new materials, because global registrations are basically a nightmare, right? Or can be, and so that I think within the healthcare business is probably one of the biggest pain points.
Great. And then Tollison Humphrey asks, what are the typical stages involved in partnering in manufacturing from P&G? How long is the process and who must sign off?
Well, I mean, there's a lot in that question. I think, where I help the organization is less in the manufacturing process, but more in the upstream technology development process. And so it always starts with an interesting material that has some kind of benefit that we're interested in, right? I think for us, as we look towards the use of bio-based materials, there are some cases in which, we are looking for bio-based drop-ins for the incumbent materials, but I think our ideal preference would be for bio-based materials that have performance benefits above and beyond the materials we're using today. And so it would really start with a technology that has an interesting benefit, and we will look at how that performs versus, our existing products or materials that would, address that benefit today. And if there is some superior benefit and a reason to believe that that material can work in the ultimate products that we're interested in, we will continue to push that development forward. And that's, again, where we'll start getting into, once we prove the, performance and the benefit of the technology, where we'll move into addressing some of the other challenges, particularly around scale and cost, right? Is this really feasible? Is this something that we can really, bring to life in a product at the scale that we need, right? And so there's a lot of upfront diligence, should cost analyses and things like that, to make sure that the material is suitable for, what we're ultimately looking to use it for, and that there is enough global supply and contingency supply and things like that for the material going forward.
And so maybe we have some new entrepreneurs on the webinar. They're not familiar with what a drop-in is. So maybe you can just define that for them.
So a drop-in would just be a substitute of a bio-based material for an existing material. So for example, as we think about surfactants, right, petroleum-based materials versus bio-based materials. And so in some cases, you're looking to have an exact substitute or a drop-in for an incumbent material that you would then remove. But the ideal would be that we're using a bio-based material, not only because it's bio-based and has a more natural connotation for the consumer, but because it has some benefit. There's some reason, why we want to use that material to provide a benefit that's superior to the benefit that we're getting from the existing material. So, and we believe that's possible, right? As we're starting to explore and more of these technologies are being developed, we're finding that there's advantages to using them beyond just their naturalness, right? And so, those are the types of products we'd love to develop going forward.
Great. Somebody asked, what are the likely drivers for adoption of products produced via synthetic biology? Supply chain, sustainable sourcing, consistent quality, demand, animal-free, environmentally free, new functionality, etc., or both?
All of the above. all of the above, right? Obviously, as a large consumer product company, we want to do right by our consumers and address the needs that they're expressing and the lifestyles that they look to lead, and match the products for that. But we also, are stewards of the environment, and we want to do good as we manufacture and develop products, and provide products and packages that are good for the environment and don't leave a huge footprint in the way that we could if we were less conscious about that. So I would say, everything that you mentioned are things that are important to us as we develop those new products.
Great. Well, if you've just joined us, we are taking Q&A with Amy Trejo from Procter & Gamble, who's the Open Innovation Manager there. And you can type your questions or chat into the box below. We have another question on the limitations of synthetic biology-produced ingredients in the personal care space. What do you think are some of the limitations?
I mean, I would think today that they are largely in the areas that I mentioned, right? In the ability to scale them at the level that we would need, and then making sure that as they are scaled, they're available at a cost that is, affordable for us to develop. But I think what I've noticed in the last couple of years is that, companies are starting to overcome the scale barriers. And so as that becomes less of an initial barrier, we become more conscious of what's being developed. How could we use that? I mean, we still understand the need to do some development work to get to the scale we'd ultimately need. But I think once you've proven now kind of, as a field that it is scalable, that's when we start to become interested and want to get more involved in, how can we leverage these products?
We just talked before we came on air that you're going to be out at the YC Demo Day next week in San Francisco.
Yes.
I wondered if you can think of any words of warning for startups about partnering with large companies.
Words of warning.
What do you think could go wrong?
Well, I think one of the things that I see with startup companies when they kind of approach us is they view, a large company as having deep pockets, which we do, but not all of which come, to us in our R&D budget. Obviously, we have a substantial investment in R&D, as I mentioned earlier, but the way that organizations are set up, everybody has their own budgets, and we don't have multi-millions of dollars to just kind of funnel into helping a startup get its business off the ground, right? We need to be engaging because there's a specific reason or a specific technology or platform or some other type of innovation that I mentioned, the variety of different types that we are interested in. And it usually starts out as some kind of joint exploration about how we can partner to develop that further. And then once we partner for some period of time and sort of prove out the technology, the platform, you name it, then we start to talk about what is the next level, what's important to us, what do we need, what is the win-win for the company and for P&G, right? And so I think making assumptions that, a large company like P&G will just give millions kind of random for, a partnership without having a clear definition of what that is, that's a little bit of something that we sometimes have to overcome when we talk with companies.
And in terms of something that I've found when SynBioBeta deals with large companies is the organizational structure, the political landscape that you have to navigate. I mean, that
never happens at a large company.
Is that part of your mandate in terms of, maybe you could just define open innovation, how you see it, and where has open innovation come from? And why a company like Apple, I'm sure, doesn't do open innovation. They're very secretive. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how open innovation, where it's come from, how it works, and if that's part of your ability to help navigate a large, complex structure.
I mean, in the way we look at open innovation, which we've done kind of formally for about 20 years now.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we've had various iterations of it, and it has really matured over time, and now it's becoming a very important part. And I know our CTO has called it out as a key strategic focus area for us going forward. But the way we look at it is, yes, we have 6,700 plus R&D employees, but there are many more very smart minds external to P&G than there are internal to P&G, right? And so we feel that there's so much that we can access externally that it would be foolish for us to assume that we can do all the development we need to do internally. And so we really do look to be more strategic going forward with our open innovation programs and aligning those to our corporate R&D, for example, that I shared, right? How do we align the landscape that we do against those needs to make sure we're tapping into the right ecosystems, working with the right universities to meet what our strategic focus areas are. So, yeah. And then, I mean, we do, align those strategic areas. Those are all lined up through the management. And then that's how we, kind of match our programs together and do the open innovation work, right?
Got it. And we've had a couple of new questions, very topically talking about IP protection in an open innovation environment. How does that work? Then what does the IP landscape look like when a technology is adopted by P&G?
Yeah, and so like I said, one of the typical formats for working, with a company with a technology or a platform of interest to us is that we'll do it in some kind of partnership. We'll agree to the field of scope for that partnership, and then put together some type of research plan. In some cases, it's a service agreement, right? They provide a technology or a service model that we're interested in, and we'll do some initial work through service agreements. Other times we have joint development arrangements where it's defined up front, what the IP rights are that come out of the joint development. Typically what we do is, we share the IP where P&G and the partner both jointly own the IP, but P&G gets exclusive rights to use that in our fields of interest, and then the partner can use it in other fields. So that often becomes a win-win for a company, because we are only interested in keeping it proprietary for our applications, but there are other applications, non-compete industries that could still have value for the partner, and so they get to monetize against that jointly developed IP in areas that are not of our core businesses.
Got it. So I want to go back to the issue of scale, and Tim Staub at Fermentum is asking about, with the launch of the USDA Biobased Tide and the original desire to source 2G cellulosic ethanol in a surfactant package, what impact does the Dow DuPont decision to sell the Nevada, Iowa facility have on your sourcing strategy? Or maybe that's another part of the business.
That is another part of the business that I'm not equipped to address.
Okay.
But Tim, I know we've met actually at the BioWorld Congress a couple weeks ago. Happy to follow up with you on that offline.
Great. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about how you see consumer needs and consumer demands changing. You talked about a preference for natural. We also talked, and what we see is the growth of the founder generation building these new direct-to-consumer companies. And we talked about a deodorant that was a company that was started in San Francisco that was recently acquired by P&G. I'm sorry, I forgot again. Native.
Yes.
So we're seeing direct-to-consumer, and when you look at the native packaging, it's definitely a preference for naturally sourced bio-based ingredients. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the needs of the consumer and how you're seeing demands change.
Yeah, I mean, the demands from the consumer are changing, right? There is a growing segment of consumers that are looking for more natural-based products, right? And they have a natural-focused lifestyle, and they want products that match that, right? And so that was somewhat niche several years ago, and it is now growing. I think, it's a bit analogous to when you think about organic foods. When they first came out, they were a small part of the aisle in the grocery store, and a lot of the foods went bad because people were willing to pay the upcharge for the organic foods. But now when you walk in, I mean, and for that matter, there's whole grocery stores that are based, chains that are based on organic based foods, right? That has really grown, and I think it's analogous for the consumer products industry as well, that it used to be a small niche of consumers, but now that segment is growing, and it's not one that we want to ignore. And for some of our sustainability goals, it's something that we want to do more of going forward. So I think we really will see that landscape shifting quite a bit in the future, and we want to be able to really participate and develop high quality, good performance products in those spaces that offer the consumers the benefit without the trade-offs, right? I mean, I think that's another piece, and we didn't really touch on that, is that in the consumer product space, a lot of consumers have almost accepted that naturally based products or bio-based products come with some kind of performance trade-off. And they've been willing to accept that, but we feel that shouldn't have to be the case, right? And that was why we developed the Tide Pure Clean, was, offering this consumer a product that she can feel good about using while not asking that she make the performance trade-off. It has the cleaning power of Tide that, anybody would expect. And so, we want to take that same approach and philosophy into the development of other similar types of products across our brands.
Can you go back and talk about the probiotic product that you worked on? What was it? What was the what was the probiotic that was inside of it,
Yeah.
and then maybe talk a little bit about the future of probiotics.
Yes. So the Align product was developed. It was a Bifidobacterium infantis. It is now been reclassified. I think it's longum, but anyway, it's Bifidobacteria-based strain, and it was developed to, address the needs of the consumers that were looking for digestive wellness benefits. I think somebody had asked a question earlier, and I didn't address it about clinical testing. But when you think about clinical testing, that is a probiotic that has a lot of clinical tests behind it, tests that we did as Procter & Gamble, but also that our partners in developing this strain, which came out of the Elementary Pharmabiotic Institute in Cork, Ireland. We did this in collaboration with a small startup company at the time called Elementary Health. But we did a lot of clinical testing on that product to prove out the digestive wellness benefits. So a lot of the products that we develop at P&G have been tested in some capacity with large-based consumer studies to really prove out the benefits, because we feel like if we're gonna, make the claim, we want the product to deliver against that. And it was the same for Align as we were developing that. So that was a fun product to be a part of the development process. I traveled to Ireland a lot for that, but it really established our presence with probiotic-based products, and we continue to look to launch more probiotics, to build on what we have with Align today. So we've had a couple of other products, but I know that, looking ahead to next-gen probiotics is something that we're very interested in.
And what kind of next-gen probiotics do you think we'll start to see in terms of
Well, I mean, if you think about the range of interest areas in healthcare, right? So what are consumers going to be looking for as they look to be more proactive about managing their health going forward? So weight management, healthy heart, that's, one of the things that we market, Metamucil. So, there's other ways to provide those benefits. We believe probiotics are very powerful in that regard. And so we look to develop them for the spaces that are strategic for us in our healthcare business.
Great. So I want to come on to P&G's commitment to transparency in terms of the ingredients that you use. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the philosophy around that.
Yeah, I mean, we'd announced, I think, several months ago, the fragrance transparency that I have to refer to my statistics on that, but we will be transparent and disclose fragrance ingredients down to the 0.01% in formula by the end of 2019. And we just believe that it is the right thing to do. And that's why we wanted to do that, to be more transparent with the consumer about the, ingredients that are in the formulas. Fragrance is one of those ingredients that tends to, get a lot of attention because people, have traditionally thought of that as a potentially problematic material. And so we just wanted to be, more transparent with the consumer about the ingredients that are in the fragrances.
And so if you had something like lavender or a fragrance that you wanted to use in a product, and suddenly you see a spike in demand, let's say that it goes into a product that's very popular, maybe you can talk a little bit about how synthetic biology can address those supply chains.
Yeah, I think as we think about, particularly products like fragrances going forward, as we want to keep the natural-based focus for those, but we consider that the supplies globally will never be able to meet the demands that we would have for the products, nor do we have a desire to deplete the global supply of these, right? For this purpose, we think about synthetic biology. Synthetic biology can play a very important role in developing fragrances going forward, not fragrances, full fragrances themselves, but the intermediates for different fragrance materials, as well as some of the fragrance materials. And so that's a big place that we're, looking into exploring now is a way to get still some naturally derived materials that play, in the spaces of our key formula fragrance components going forward.
Great. So I'd like to go back to, we just have another question on IP. Let's take that. What does the IP landscape look like around probiotics? Is it possible to patent a naturally found bacterium?
I mean, again, I'm not sort of an expert in that particular space, but I think it's difficult depending, it's difficult, let's say it this way, it's difficult to get broad-based patents. I think it's a bit easier to get sort of specific patents depending on, how you use it, what the benefits you're going to claim for, and what the data you'd have to support that is. But just patenting strains, does tend to get challenging. Not to say that it's not possible, but it really would depend on how we would look to use it. We would probably look to patent around, making sure that we would be able to use it in the space that we're interested in, if it was possible at all to patent. But yeah, sometimes it does get complicated, right? That said, again, I'm not sort of the expert in that particular space,
but I'm guessing a naturally occurring bacterium used in a specific application would be a strong patent. So let's just jump back to the slide where you showed the various different areas, and I wondered if you could go into a little bit more detail on these, and specifically maybe just talk us through
Sure.
some of the areas that you're most excited about.
Yeah, and so like I said, we have sort of 5 vertical elements to our corporate R&D organization, and you can see the 5 spaces that we, are focusing on there. In the material science space, which I think, is very ripe for use of bio-based materials going forward. We look to really create the high value, high performance materials that I've mentioned, through transformations that involve physical, chemical, and biological approaches. For the non-wovens business that I mentioned that are important for our, feminine care and baby care organization.
And maybe it sounds obvious, but if you can just define non-wovens for people.
Non-wovens are materials that have a kind of fabric feel, but that aren't developed by weaving the fabric, right? They're non-woven. And so they're, structures that are created to make something that feels like a woven material, but it is not woven.
Got it.
The polymers are not woven. And fibers are obviously important in that, as well as films, right? And chemicals play a part in that as well. In chemistry, we obviously, manipulating is, I don't like that word, but manipulating chemistry and delivery systems to overcome long-standing trade-offs, right? So surface chemistry is obviously very important for us if we think about, how our products are used. Skin is a surface, right? So when you think about even skincare products, there's some surface science that goes into the rheology of the product and things like this, as well as actually cleaning surfaces for some of our home care or paper towel businesses. In life science, we look for life science inspired chemistries to really deliver that transformative, consumer benefits with focus in epithelial health. Aging, obviously, broadly. And then sensorial biology is very important if you think about using our products, right? The way the toothpaste tastes and how that impacts how you feel about the efficacy of the product. Smells, scents, going back to fragrances, right? And then also microbial control, right? That's an important part of all of our products, even if you think about preservatives, right? And so I think, synthetic biology can play a huge part across those 3 spaces. Material chemistry and life science. I like to talk about it as being the intersection of those 3 disciplines and being an opportunity for it, the discipline to be translational for Procter & Gamble and ultimately help us to develop products based on synthetic biology that provide, better benefits. Smart and connected products is also another focus area within our corporate R&D organization, and you can imagine why that's important in light of the founders that you were talking about and their successors that are coming. Creating really, personalized consumer experiences that drive delight from both the product efficacy, but as well as, developing products that are adaptive and responsive, right? And then as part of that too, what are the services that go along with that? So when you think about, use of apps in conjunction with products, or, what other benefits can the product provide for you in your home, or what could the product do for you if you think about, auto reordering or things like that, that are really advancing the benefit of the product beyond just the use of the materials themselves, right? And packaging, we have what we call advanced packaging. And I think this is also important in that regard, right? It's transforming the package from just being a container that our product is sold in to becoming a source of competitive advantage for us and having a benefit not only at the shelf, but also throughout the usage cycle for the consumer, right? So how does the package become an integral part of the way he or she uses the product in the home, and how could the package provide benefit beyond the way we thought of it historically, right? So those are the 5 spaces within our corporate R&D.
Excellent. So I want to say a few more things about the event that we have coming up in October 1 through 3. We actually have the P&G after party on Tuesday night. That's going to be taking place at IndieBio. And we also have a number of your colleagues who are going to be coming to the conference. We're going to be doing a partnering workshop for companies out there interested in partnering with P&G. And we're also going to be, I think, bringing some products to the conference so that people can actually start to see some of the other products that you have. Maybe you can say a little bit about that.
Yeah, we will have a booth, I think, is how it's going to be set up. And I'd love to have my colleagues that work in the R&D organizations that develop those products be in the booth to be able to, interact with the conference attendees and talk more and ask specific questions of them and kind of also learn from the, community what are opportunities for future developments for those products going forward. So we have a plan to bring some of those brands and some of the R&D folks out with us. We're also going to have some folks from our corporate R&D organization that will be a part of the booth as well, because I think it's important, especially as that's typically where some of the more upstream technologies will hit first, to have folks there to be able to talk with the participants about that as well.
Excellent. Yep. So if you have ideas, technology, opportunities to partner, then we hope to see you in October. So we're coming to the end of the webinar. If you have any last questions, then please type them in the box below. Again, we'll be giving out a free ticket to SynBioBeta for the best question.
Who decides what the best question is?
I think that goes to Kevin Costa. He's the chief question and free ticket decider.
Got it.
So we have an interesting question on the definition of natural, which is something that I always often think about. So what is your definition of a natural product? And what do you think your consumer's definition is? And is there a difference?
Yes. So that's really kind of a loaded question, right? Because there are so many different definitions of natural, right? My definition of natural could be different than yours, but both of those are consumer definitions of natural, right? And so, what we really aim to do is understand what the needs of the consumers are that are looking to live a more natural based lifestyle, and based on that develop products that address those needs, right? And to the extent that we can do that with bio-based materials, great. It might not be relevant in some cases to use bio-based materials, but that's an option where it is relevant, right? And so our focus at P&G is really on how do we address the needs of the consumer that's looking to live a more natural lifestyle with products that address those needs, right? So if you think about our Pampers Pure product, that's based a lot on free from, the parabens, the dyes, the bleaches. The moms that are looking to have a more natural approach to taking care of their babies are looking for something that addresses her concerns in those spaces. And so we're providing her with a product that does that.
Great. And do you think that there are other companies that you could point to as great examples of firms that have done a good job with consumer transparency on natural products?
Oh, that's a bit difficult to kind of comment on behalf of other companies, right? But I mean, I think obviously, we're not the only ones that are noticing this as a consumer trend, right? And there have been companies that have been addressing this before we have even, right? And I just think, again, in the spirit of looking to develop the best products in the categories, you're kind of push each other right in those spaces, and hopefully we do good for the overall category, and that just helps us to provide a range of better products for the consumer overall in the space.
Great. So we have one final question, which I'm going to have you read to everybody. But before we do that, is there any final thoughts that you have for the people who are watching?
Gosh, I think I've covered a lot of the things that I think are relevant and important for this, community to know. I'm just very excited about the event that's coming up in October, and about P&G's, continued and growing role in sponsoring the conference, and look forward to hopefully meeting some of the folks that have participated in the webinar today at the conference, either at our booth or, seeing you in some other capacity at the event. So please do come to our after party at IndieBio, and we'll look forward to interacting with folks there.
Excellent. Okay, so you get to read the last question here. You can read it.
Okay. So, with a second 10 wins season in 3 years, and the third and sixth, Northwestern is well past the point of just being some try-hard, feel-good story program under Pat Fitzgerald. Will our Wildcats have another winning season, and is there another Rose Bowl coming? Go Cats. Hey, I have to say, I was here at Northwestern 20 years ago, and it was when Northwestern wasn't where they are today. And I have to just say, it's great. Yes, of course would be the answer, right?
And that was from Tim Staub. So thank you, Tim. Tim, I think you've asked enough good questions that I'm going to overrule Kevin, and I'm going to give you the free pass to SynBioBeta. So congratulations. Yes. Thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you in October. And thank you, Amy Trejo, Open Innovation Manager at Procter & Gamble. We'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.